the hour. I think we can start now. We'll just let people in as they come in. Welcome everyone to Celo Governance Call 33. This is a pretty big one, pretty big announcement coming in last week. There's only going to be one item on the agenda today, and that is the Celo L2 proposal from Celo. The structure is going to work as follows. So the first 30 minutes will give Matthew and Mariano from Celo some time to explain the proposal. For the 15 minutes after that, we'll have a session for clarifications, questions, and then following that, we will have a 15 minutes for open criticism and concerns. Please wait till the end for criticism and concerns, just to give time to potentially those answers will be answered prior to the questions. And without further ado, I'll welcome Matthew to the stage.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the short intro, and welcome everyone to this governance call. It's an exciting one. I'm still in Paris, where ECC was happening, and which is the time when we announced, or shortly before that, where we announced the forum post. So basically, what this is about is, right, we wrote the forum post and published it last Saturday, and we got loads and loads of feedback on that over the last couple of days, online, on Twitter. Maybe you saw some of these tweets, but also in person. I mean, we hoped for a lot of resonance, and I think we got the maximum amount of what we could have hoped for. And basically, based on all of that, we have compiled a CGP, which is reducing some of the points which were a bit unclear or contested in the forum post, and reduce it to the minimum, namely the question of whether Celo should become an L2 or not. And that is now what we are putting forward as a temperature check kind of Celo governance proposal. So yeah, let me share this post. If you allow me to share, or you can just look at the link, basically. So it's in here. I'm just linking it again. That's the CGP that we have built. And what it details is 90% taken from the forum post. So everybody that has read the forum post should already know, but I'm going over it again just to make sure that everybody here is on the same page. And most importantly, what is removed is any specific discussion around architecture, right? So in the forum post, we have proposed that we would use the OP stack and the eigenlayer DA solution for the data availability. And we have cut that out here because in Paris, or over the last week, a lot of people came to us with different types of proposals and feedback around different ways of how we can achieve the same goals and implement, what we really want, which is becoming an L2. And therefore, we think we need to do a little bit more thinking around these specific implementation details. But at the same time, we still want to receive early feedback from the community, and not just those who are, present on Twitter or we bump into personally, but from everybody that, holds Celo, whether the overall idea of moving towards an L2 or not actually resonates. So we've been talking with a lot of people, and we have the feeling that there is strong support for this, but we don't really know, right? And so that is the goal of this governance proposal. Yeah. So let me get into a bit more detail. Okay, I can share the screen now. So let me do that. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, so just that everybody actually looks at the same stuff. Okay, so basically the abstract I already talked about, right? This is just about whether we as a Celo should move to an L2. And specifically what we do specify in the proposal here in the temperature check is that we want to leverage the current validator set to create basically a decentralized sequencer. So we want to improve on current sequencer technology that is being used and leverage the fact that we already have a decentralized set of validators also in this new system. And that is a key improvement over certain other types of L2 approaches. Then we also want to commit to an off-chain data availability layer. This is not really about the technology, like, we don't really care about how we achieve our goals. But the main reason here is that we acknowledge that a lot of projects who are live on Celo already now are dependent on low gas fees. And currently, the only way how we can achieve to keep these gas fees lower is if we use an off-chain DA solution. So we want to commit to that. We are not really 100% sure about which one to choose, right? We just want to use whatever is best for Celo and the outcome. And then finally, we also commit to still having a one block finality of a certain type, right? So finality in the end, ultimately, it's a probabilistic property. And depending on if you store your state on Ethereum, you will always inherit, reorg risks on Ethereum, etc. Depends also a lot on whether you do an optimistic or a CK type L2. But what we commit to is that we are still having relevant security for most step after one block finality. Also, the main reason there is that, first of all, we think it's a cool property, but second of all, people have been building on Celo as a platform, leveraging that one block finality, and we want to keep supporting everybody who is relying on that. Okay, so what do we think, why this even makes sense? So I think there is overall support and understanding for the reasoning behind this. I think especially historically, it's important to remember that basically we have started off from the roots of Ethereum, right? And back in the days, there were no layer 2s. Ethereum was still using proof of stake. It was a lot more expensive and with less throughput. And so when Celo was started, that wasn't really an option to build all of what the founders wanted to build on top of Celo, on top of Ethereum. So that's why Celo as an individual chain was even built. But we were always trying to keep the relationships active with the Ethereum community. We are very much inspired by them and benefited a lot from what the Ethereum community has built. And we are also trying to give back. And we leveraged some of the ideas like the IP 1559 already from the beginning, or also the discussions around proof of stake. Now, with the time, the differences in tech have become a bit smaller, right? Ethereum has progressed a lot. And with the rollup stack, it has now become actually feasible for us to be built on Ethereum. And we think it makes sense just to increase that collaboration with Ethereum people. Especially what we believe is that if we use something like, for example, OP Stack or some other solution, which maybe also other L2s will use, that we will benefit from more interoperability, from using frameworks, which not only Celo uses, but other users uses, from a bigger base of basically L2s, which use the same kind of tool set, and which then also enables developers to use more tools, right? Currently, Many EVM tools, the most important ones are available on Celo, but still you need to make some small porting issues, or need to support another blockchain and other data and so on. Sometimes you need to deploy some smart contracts, and we need to convince projects, tooling projects to do that. And we believe that if we have like a really clear set of SDKs or so that other L2s also use, that this collaboration improves. So that is also basically already going into the second point of enhanced composability, right? We were always EVM compatible, but we have some differences. And we think that this is going to reduce the differences, and also making it easier for the blockchain team who works on basically the Celo fork of Geth to maintain that. Then our very important point is that we want to increase security, right? So we have a decentralized set of validators. We have 300 million Celo locked, but obviously Ethereum has more validators and more locked Ether. And that is not the only thing that will secure an L2, right? Depending on what type of data availability layer and what type of L2 you build, that also has important security consequences. But what we'd imagine, for example, when using something like EigenDA, is that even if that has less security than Ethereum, it will still have substantially more security than Celo currently has. For most of the projects that are active right now on Celo, that's probably not super critical, but right, we are looking forward. And especially if we think about enterprise use cases where a lot of money is at stake from the very beginning, or scale can be reached a lot quicker, these security considerations are very important. And yeah, I mean, the last point is just that with these off-chain DA solutions, it has become possible to maintain low gas fees, which is very important and which we already talked about. So those are the benefits. And regarding like ecosystem effects, basically the first thing that we want to stress, right, is that this does not change or really impact the mission that we have. We still want to be the chain that is available, worldwide in every country, and builds prosperity for all. We actually think that this new technical approach helps us to deliver on that mission. And we think that also, our historical alignment with Ethereum that we always had in mind is strengthened through this move. And very importantly, right, on a technical level, that we will have a trustless bridge and to Ethereum and more direct access to the liquidity which is on Ethereum. So if you think about different types of stable coins or so, it becomes a lot more easy to access those, or less risky from a security standpoint, let's say. So for validators, right, it's clear, okay, their job will change. We have already indicated that most probably they will be used, or we would propose to leverage this set of validators as sequencers, and importantly as decentralized sequencers. Innovate on that. What is clear is that the validators are, very dear to the Celo ecosystem. They have fulfilled an important role during the last years, and we really want them to fulfill an important role also going forward. And we think, it's a crucial asset of Celo versus other younger ecosystems which have not yet grown their community as much, that we have this set of validators, and we definitely want to keep them here. So for developers, some things are changing and others are not. So what does not change is that dApps don't need to be upgraded, like social connect. So our phone mapping on chain remains the same. Gas fees, which is what people are asking the most about, would hopefully stay the same. Also, we don't know 100% exactly, but basically what we commit to is that they don't change more as they have over the last, 1 year. So currently they are denominated in Celo, right? And I mean, it's a volatile asset, so it can go up to 3x in a couple of months. And so if gas fees double measured in Celo, that is basically irrelevant versus just the fluctuation of Celo price. So it could be that, they go down measured in Celo, but up measured in US dollars or some other way. But it shouldn't go up 10x. That's basically what we commit to. Yeah, what does change is the finality. Again, we already commit to having some sort of one block finality, but finality is probabilistic. And at least in this original optimism or optimistic based idea, we don't really know how exactly we're going to implement, right? But we commit to having some security after a single block. But then there will also be additional security after a longer time of window, which can depend, as we said, both on Ethereum's model, but also on the data availability layer. Good. Yes. So for end users, ideally nothing should change. As with every hard fork or so, nothing changes unless the validators don't all upgrade or there is some bug. What we hope is that, again, the gas fees remain the same just for developers, and also that the access to other Ethereum ecosystem chains, be it other L2s or the L1, becomes easier, and that it becomes easier for end users to move their assets, be it financial assets or other assets around. And for the holders of Celo, I mean, it's a bit hard to say, does something change or not. Basically, from a technical point of view, which is the only thing I can cover, is that nothing would really change. So currently Celo, right, is a governance token. It controls the core contracts of the Celo blockchain. That would remain the same. Currently Celo is also used to be staked and then vote or elect validator groups. And we would also plan to have a similar system in place, but obviously that depends a lot on how exactly the sequencer is built. So yeah, that is the overview. So again, let me just say one more time, this is like a stripped down version of the forum post based on feedback. So we removed any architecture or like implementation discussion. This is really just about, we basically want to have feedback from the community, whether they think it is wise and a good move to become an L2 as a general idea. And we then think that in further sequences, it makes sense to also discuss specific architecture decisions. Mariano, maybe do you have something to add already?
Not really right now. I guess I'm happy to try to answer any questions on what you just said, but I guess you basically explained, all of it.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Matthew. We're now gonna open it up for clarifications to anything Matthew said in the proposal there. We have 15 minutes for this stage. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
Hi, this is Muni. So I have a question regarding the liquidity pools that are live on Uniswap for Celo. So the transition, does the transition require anything to do from our end, or
No, so I mean, right, these are assets on smart contracts on the blockchain, and so think of this upgrade basically like a client kind of upgrade. It doesn't really touch an average DApp smart contract on Celo, so the assets can keep living there. Yeah, what could change is, right, that different types of tokens are being introduced, because USDC can now be bridged directly to an L2 of Celo, and maybe that becomes like the standard stablecoin against which on Uniswap other tokens are being traded or something like that. But that would be changes that happen over time and not instantly, right? So the same smart contracts will live and the same tokens will exist, and instantly you don't really have to change anything. That's my understanding.
yeah, thank you for that. And so we do have some liquidity in USDC though, along with our own ERC20 token there. So, so if I understand correctly, you mean that, so since we do not have any direct bridging for USDC, so how does it work? Can you please clarify once again?
Yeah, I mean, that depends a lot on essentially then Circle, right? I mean, there are different versions of USDC. There's like, the one that you can redeem with Circle for bank-backed US dollars on certain chains. And then you have USDCs where you have additional bridging risk, right, which are not directly issued by Circle. That's the type of USDC we have on Celo. And so ultimately it would depend on whether Circle would accept a variant of USDC on an L2 Celo also as redeemable. But from a technical perspective, right, that would be a different type of token. You would probably have to like deploy a new smart contract and call it like USDC in parentheses redeemable by Circle or some other variant. Yeah, for the moment, like if you don't change anything, the USDC would just still be a bridged USDC. So those are more like economical or BD kind of questions and not really initially a technical question, I think.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just missed 20 minutes of this conversation. So
No worries. I'm also like, I'm not the most proficient person maybe to answer all of the questions. So if somebody thinks it's wrong, just jump in. Maybe what I can add is that, what we said with, okay, being closer to Ethereum and aligned and so on, like for Circle, it would definitely become a lot easier and more secure to accept that kind of USDC as redeemable, right? Or maybe you could just have the Ethereum-based USDC bridge it over to Celo in a trustless manner, and then you could always go back to the L1 and then you have actually redeemable USDC. Yeah.
Oh, and like I'm not sure, is there any other call scheduled for economy related questions answered by Celo anytime soon?
So currently there is no call scheduled, but we announced this 7 days ago. So this is the first call, and I'm sure if we have engagement and more questions and so on, we are very happy to organize more calls and get all the feedback from everybody so that we, ensure that we are building for all here. But also just, to stress this again, right? This is a very long-term project, so it's great to get all the questions as early as possible, to also find solutions to questions as early as possible. But you don't need to like worry about having to make any decisions over the next like 1 month or so. You know, that is going to be more kind of a year-long project versus a couple of week project.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Of course. And yeah, we encourage everybody just to always comment on the forum, right? And if you want more calls or have questions around the topic or so, we are pretty available all on there.
Thanks for that question. Next, we have DC with a question.
Hey, Wade, thanks. And good morning or good afternoon, everybody. So super exciting announcement and proposal here. I'm very curious to hear what sort of feedback the team got from folks out in Paris about the technical implementation, but I understand that's not what we're here to debate or discuss right now. So I'll stay tuned for that. I did have an economics question. So L2s pay less for security than L1s because they depend on the security of the underlying L1. So I'm curious, what is Celo paying for security today? I guess in the form of CUSD epoch rewards paid to validators. And what would we expect to pay for security post-transition to an L2? And then what impacts do we think that would have, both positive and negative, on the overarching ecosystem?
Yeah, so very good question. So first of all, like, you know, everything is fair game here and you can ask any type of question. What I meant with this is more an economic question, is more that by discussing the technical aspects, we don't really know how stuff would change, right? It depends a lot on the reaction of other parties, and it's not, so I'm referring to the question before, right? It cannot be defined or answered only with the knowledge of we technically become an L2, what happens, right? If it is kind of a business question, then it depends on other actors and how they react. So we can only really speculate. That's what I meant with it, and not that you cannot ask now. And also DC, because you first asked, hey, what kind of feedback did we get on the technical side? Well, I'll leave this to Mariano. He can jump in just after me. I'm very excited to speak about general feedback. So I think, you know, I've been at many crypto conferences, you know, since the 2 years that I'm at Celo, and this is definitely the one where, you know, we were topic, maybe number one, but like a top topic for sure. Everywhere I went, people were talking about this proposal, and, you know, a lot of influential people from the community, like the Ethereum community, the overall Web3 community, have tweeted about this, have referenced this in their talks. And generally, people were very supportive, engaged, and thought that this move or this proposal makes a lot of sense. And I think people are mostly excited about aligning more closely and becoming more close to Ethereum in many different senses. Yeah. Mariano, do you want to say a little bit about what you heard from the technical side, or?
Yeah, I guess we didn't really have a lot of like in-depth discussions on that. I guess there was just general excitement, and I guess the solution makes sense for many people that we chat about. And so, and maybe I can try to answer like the other question. It's more like, so it's true. On security, I guess you can imagine that. So if you sell by using inflation, it's basically doing two things. It's paying like validator rewards and voter rewards. They're not totally fixed in amounts. Like there's some formulas that basically try to put a cap of how much are going to be minting or creating Celo. But you can imagine like the kind of like a Celo security right now, it's in the order, I guess, let me check, but it's so you need like 20,000 Celo per validator, and then you need like and then we have like a total around like 278 millions on like votes. So Celo being voted. Now, how we expect that to change in the future? I guess it's a bit of an open question. We don't want to try. I guess we understand that, like, again, there's responsibilities are going to change. And so I think like Sam was asking, like, what are going to be the things that like validators need to run. And so you can imagine this system, we will need to pay for fees on Ethereum, which again, the idea is to minimize, but like trying to do as minimum as possible there. And then there's fees for the A layer, which we expect is going to be, I guess, much cheaper in that sense. But it is true that I guess you are having more to be paid, and so there's some actual more in how you're going to do that. Now, will validators be doing less? I guess with this attempt of like trying to get like this like one block finality, I guess validators will be putting their stake in like assuring that whenever something is created on the chain, even if it's not yet on the DA layer or on Ethereum, you still have guarantees provided by the Celo like sequencer / validators, right? And so in that sense, you could argue they're like pursuing like a very similar job than doing today, and they are giving that security at least for that period of time where like you don't yet have like the like you can't yet derive the canonical chain from Ethereum. So I don't have like a final like answer on like, okay, this is how it's going to be, because as I said, it's kind of like a bit of an open question, but we expect that should be more or less similar, and we don't expect to change that much.
Maybe just to add a little bit, so if you look at the amount that the chain is currently spending in inflation for security, it's about 3.3% over the last, say, half year. And there is a little bit more inflation that goes towards, for example, the community fund and to pay off for carbon offset to the carbon offset fund as well. But just for security, we're paying about 3.3%. If you look at other L2s today, they're actually paying generally more for security, I would say, because gas fees are higher on these other chains, and that's primarily for data availability. I think like 90 to 95% of gas fees on today's optimistic chains go towards paying for data availability by storing ordered transactions on Ethereum. And I think that's the reason why we were so excited about EigenDA, is because it turns out that data availability is an embarrassingly parallel problem that doesn't need to cost that much. And of course, that's why on the long-term roadmap of Ethereum, sharding is kind of the solution to this problem. And EigenDA is of course implementing the design of bank sharding, but bringing it to market sooner through restaking. And so it'll be interesting to see what the change will be for in terms of the cost for us. I think, as Matt mentioned, there is an interest, there is a lot of excitement around maintaining the current validator set, securing it in the same way, using it to create a decentralized sequencer, both to be significantly more decentralized than other L2s and to kind of lead the way and to provide a public good that maybe others can benefit from. But also, to ensure that we're keeping the token economics the same for everyone that's put hard work into, for example, setting up validators. Long term, we'll have to see exactly what the gas costs will look like and the cost for EigenDA. But we can also pay for some of these fees, not necessarily using inflation, but for example, using funds from the community fund in the short term. as we figure things out. And so there's actually a prospect to have this both have, pretty much no token economic impact and no change to inflation. But again, those are things that we would have to figure out.
Thank you. I think, did that answer your question, David? Cool. Okay, so next up we have Sam. He has a question. I think it may have been answered, but I'm not sure. Welcome to the stage, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. You guys alluded to it, but I just wanted to expand a little bit more. So it's clear that if Celo does move to an L2, there will be a lot of cost savings in the cost that Celo is currently paying for security, right? And right now, the entity paying for the security of Celo is basically everyone who is holding the asset, right? It's getting paid through inflation. If you're moving to an L2, my understanding is there's going to be extra costs from an infrastructure perspective, right? Meaning that any node or validator needs to be connected to a trusted L1 node on Ethereum. And then that's a new cost that is going to come up. But instead of being borne by the entire network, that cost is going to be borne by validator and node operators. So my question goes to, has there been any comparison or any studies on how the cost of security, or should I say the savings in the cost of security of moving to an L2 compared to the increased costs in infrastructure that is going to come from being an L2 on Ethereum and the need for L1 nodes? And secondly, are there any strategies from the foundation to help offset costs for node operators who, when they started validating or running nodes on Celo, were not factoring in this like extra cost of running an extra node on Ethereum?
So Marek, maybe you have a better answer. Like what I can say is that, we haven't really decided on what the specific exact role of new validators will be, and thus also not new compensation models, which would depend on that exact role, right? So I think it's a bit early for that exactly. But yeah, Marek, maybe you have more context insights.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It's certainly fair that decentralized sequencers will have to run an ETH full node, and in theory they could use an RPC node and used a third party. But I think for the decentralization of the actual underlying decentralized sequencer, it would be pretty important that everyone runs their own full node. We would hope that validators would kind of offset this cost by also solo staking on ETH, because that's another way to earn revenue. That way they could also opt into running EigenLayer, which could also allow them to potentially use EigenDA if that ends up being the kind of final solution for data availability. I will add that Ethereum has historically kept block sizes small in order to make running an Ethereum full node relatively cost effective. And so relative to the hardware requirements of running Celo, which are actually a little higher than running Ethereum, because we do aim to process, we are structured to be able to handle higher loads than Ethereum. I think the cost may actually be not as big as percentage wise as one might initially suspect, especially because the recommended hardware requirements for validators today are to have a hot standby and to have proxy nodes fronting your validator. And so ultimately running one extra node may not end up being that expensive.
That helps. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have D. Welcome to the stage, D.
Yes, hello everyone. Really excited to see the change and what it could, what it could bring. So thank you. Been with Celo from really very early beginning with reward competition and everything. So I have a few questions. The first one is related to the Celo stability mechanism. Are there going to be any changes to this? Because it looks like one of the strengths of Celo was being able to propose those stable coins in different currency. So do you see any changes coming to this, or will it be kept as it is? Because the idea behind was like, is there any way to make some changes so people would have the possibility to lock like Ethereum and be able to mint and unmint Celo stable dollar, like what people are already doing with DAI. It will add one form of feature on top of Celo. Is that possible?
I can quickly jump in on this one. Hi, I'm Bogdan. I'm the CTO of Mento, the stability mechanism that you're referencing. So yeah, we're actually working on exactly that, specifically CDP modules for allowing minting of stable tokens by locking up collateral. And like you mentioned, Ethereum is already a reserve currency for Mento, but Celo as an L2 would make it way easier for value to flow between the chains and allow us to better manage the reserve as well by having like, this quote unquote trustless bridge with the L1. So yeah, all of the features you mentioned will be helped by this, and are things we're working on actively.
That sounds really good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Another question was related to the, I'm not sure if you have the answer or not, but the validator hardware requirement. So basically our role would be changing and it would become as a decentralized sequencer in the L2 chain for the Celo validator. So do you have an idea of the impact of the hardware requirement, like the power and the storage, and how could this affect us?
I think that's basically what we chatted about before, right? That
Sorry, I had missed earlier.
yeah, additionally, there's a need to run an Ethereum node. Mainly that is additional requirement, and you kind of have to decide whether you want to run the full node yourself, or as Riram also said,
No, but apart the Ethereum node, for the Celo validator itself, like the hardware requirement for the Celo validator.
yeah, that is more unclear, right? Because how that decentralized sequencer would exactly work is still pretty vague. Mariano, do you have some specific idea there already? I mean, I would say it's very hard to say, but
Yeah, I guess so as we are, I guess, thinking and like going over proposal on like the technical side, okay, it's hard to say, but what I can say what I guess we have in mind currently, I don't think there's going to be any sensible changes to that. Like you would be performing like it would be performing a very similar job. So if we take, for example, the proposal on the forum post, it would basically do the same, and then you would have like to do this kind of like sending the transaction batch to the eigenlayer node, which that would actually be like I would say like a lighter process, so it's not heavy, it's not a heavy lift. So I would imagine this would be fairly similar to what it is today. But again, I repeat, I guess as we go over the technical details and we like finalize our solution, it would be more clear, right? But
it was just to get a general idea, like maybe do you think we'll need more CPU or more RAM or more storage? But I understand, like it's still on the planning and theory stage.
Yeah,
And,
and to add to that, I suspect that the change will, as Mariano said, have been minimal changes. However, I think what's more likely to have changes is just kind of the growing demand for the chain. You know, we've just had a really, really great month over the last, or a great set of months over the last, say, 6 months in terms of growth of usage. So I think we just have to continue to monitor that and make sure that we're scaling the block size with the usage and making sure that, yeah, we just continue to scale the chain with the demand. And so I think if anything, that's going to have bigger impacts. And, you know, as always, we're monitoring that closely, and we continue to do load testing to and, you know, continue to make improvements to the client so that when the load does kind of increase beyond the current block size, we'll be able to increase it through governance.
Got it. Thank you. 2 more questions. One is related to the penalty. It was liveliness. It would be penalty related to the liveliness and to whether the validator is online or not. And currently we have the slashing mechanism when the validator is offline. Would it be something similar in here for the L2 chain, or there would be something else? So basically the 2 main, I think, penalties would be coming from the liveliness and then the double signing. Are they the same thing remaining with the transition to L2 chain?
I can jump in. Yes, absolutely. Those are going to be the 2 exact same kind of slashing conditions as before.
Okay. Thank you. And do you I'm not sure if it's too soon for this question, but like do you see like a decentralization of sequencer happening? So having more and more validator for it in the near future or in the future. How do you guys see things?
I guess there's multiple expressions that we can do. So it's hard to speak like on what will happen. I can't speak of what we've been thinking so far, and I guess what I've been thinking so far, it's not necessarily or not for like this first take on like being an L2. What will happen after? Yeah, it's hard to say. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question was related to the validator rewards. So I've heard the question in your previous answer, and it was just to like so basically from what has happened is that a certain reward mechanism was put into place at the start of Celo, and we had joined because it was a very interesting mechanism. It was novel compared to what was happening in other chain, and it was really quite good. So I've heard that the idea would be to try and keep reward on a similar level. If possible, I would ask if it's possible to consider to even increase those reward mechanisms, because like when this was put into place, it was like a couple of years ago. And if we look into the, let's say, cost of the running a validator, so we have been mainly thinking in terms of like hardware requirement and everything. But whenever like we add other, let's say, layers, operation related layers or the legal requirement, accounts and everything, whenever like as validator, we need a form of expertise in any other domain, things have completely changed, like what was happening those few years back. So just had this comment on this one.
I think that's a great topic for perhaps another governance proposal. And certainly, all of this is governable through on-chain governance, and so I think, if others, if you can find other validators that kind of agree with this assessment and feel like it should be increased, then I would definitely encourage folks to kind of band together and create a governance proposal. I will say that after the next hard fork in August, where some mechanisms that are currently in place that go and bolster the Mento reserve, when those mechanisms are removed in the next hard fork, I think the inflation for the overall Celo network and the proportion of that inflation that goes towards validator rewards and staking rewards, I believe will increase. And so it may be worth waiting until after August to see if folks still are interested in pursuing another governance proposal. But that's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Thank you very much. That's all on my end.
Thanks, Dee, for all those thoughtful questions. We have one question in the chat from Sriram, and it is it possible to only run Ethereum Light node as a decentralized sequencer node, particularly in the model where transfers from Ethereum to Celo happen only after finalization on Ethereum?
I think it was a statement, or maybe Sriram
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
to
yeah.
elaborate.
Yeah, sorry, it was a statement. I was just saying that it's possible because I think there was a question from Vitalik in the Celo governance forum on, whether transfer happens before finalization or after finalization, and Marek had commented that the model that is being currently thought about is the one where you transfer only after finalization, in which case it's possible that just running a light node is enough. The light node committees are set to finalize blocks, so that could be one other alternative to explore in the design space.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification. Any more questions? Criticisms, concerns? Okay, looks like there's no more questions. We're coming up on the hour now. Sorry, we have one more question from DC. What's the next step?
So then the next step is that we will launch this governance proposal, like the temperature check, and we'll have people vote on that and get some more number-based feedback after already getting a lot of individual feedback from a lot of people. So just as Juan says, yes, we submit it on chain and we'll await the vote. And over the next couple of weeks, assuming that people are as excited on chain about this as in person from what we've experienced, we will continue working on this. And then the next step is to flesh out more specifically, okay, how we want to achieve to become that 2, right? In the forum post, we already have suggested a bunch of implementation decisions. We will come back to those, refine that, and then keep evolving together with the community what we actually want to execute, and also start executing that, right? We don't only want to chat about plans, but actually deliver them.
Maybe also keep an eye out for the next hard fork. Currently, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, it's slated for end of August, which I think for all node operators, should already be on your calendars. But if not, just a PSA right now. This hard fork is useful either way, regardless which way the community votes on this temperature check, but it will certainly be very useful if the community decides that this is a great path forward, because it brings the Celo blockchain client more in alignment with either an L2 or the Ethereum client. So that's something definitely to keep an eye out for. I think it's going to be a nice hard fork that's coming to your kind of friendly chain soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Marek. So that leads us to the end of the call. It's on the hour now. The notes and the video will be up on the governance GitHub repo shortly. Thank you everyone for your time.